Alright, I need to make one thing clear right off the bat here. If you're playing the keyboard bongos right now going, "You'll never be a woman, you hate him because he's Christian, troon, troon, troon," just click off the video now. This is not for you. This is for people who want to have a reasonable discussion of honesty and media literacy on the internet, and even if you are a WENDIGOON fan, please keep it civil. If you're the type of person to comment transphobic slurs and death threats, which I got literal tons of after posting and then unlisting my objectively flawed original video on this subject, I'm not going to convince you. Just tab out, move on to a different video. It's fine. Anyways, let's talk about the subject of this video. There is basically no chance you don't know who WENDIGOON is, but if you're the type who sub to me to hear me talk about shit like Sluggish Morse or Southland Tales, you might need a reminder. WENDIGOON is a Tennessee-based horror YouTuber who talks about stuff like true crime, horror web series and movies, and the paranormal. We don't really care about the last two, as at most I just disagree with his takes sometimes. Maybe I'll make a whole thing about the urban spook hysteria next time I talk about analog horror, but we'll see. But the true crime stuff does interest me. I care a lot about history. I'm a known book reader. I've read all of Infinite Jest, which is better than most people who say they've read all of Infinite Jest. Burn. I particularly care about historical accuracy and honesty, which I think a lot of YouTubers don't really care about. You click on a true crime video or a pop psychology video and they don't cite their sources and get 15 damn facts wrong. But WENDIGOON is heavily respected. He's a YouTuber a lot of people adore, and when I got his video on Ted K recommended to me, after really only watching his video on Skinamarink, I immediately became worried at the lack of sources in the description. Just ads. Lots and lots of ads. This is a constant throughout all of WENDIGOON's video, and while it doesn't really matter when you're talking about something like the Mandela Catalog, when you're talking about real figures or trying to make a work of biography, you do need to use sources. A lot of people will get mad at me for calling this out, saying WENDIGOON's content is not meant to be accurate history. He personally describes it to you as your weird uncle talking to you about conspiracy stuff. And while that might be true, and that is the energy that he sometimes exudes, he says in the description of every video, verbatim, this video is for educational purposes. The events described and shown are historically/artistically significant, and the content should be treated as a comprehensive recollection/analysis of events. If he is trying to make educational content, comprehensive recollections of events as he says, he is trying to teach you about something, make you learn things. And if you're doing that, you need to cite your sources, for many reasons. One, if you make a claim and say it's verified by experts, you can then show what those experts said to people. Take in his Ted K video, where he says that experts have claimed that Kaczynski is not trans.
Now, I want to make it very clear, there are several dozens of reports from gender professionals, from doctors who have far more experience than myself in the nature of gender reassignment or transgender individuals. And between the psychologists and other doctors who have read over Ted's writings, it is by and large believed that Ted was not actually transgender.
I looked long and hard at people trying to discuss Ted K and his gender troubles, and the only one I could find by some sort of expert is this piece by Zagria, who writes a lot about trans culture and does have a degree in social sciences, which is, better than I'll ever be. But I also think that this piece is absolutely not in-depth enough to make this claim. Zagria's only point that he isn't trans is that he didn't cross-dress, which, buddy, you don't have to cross-dress to be trans. I know you're the expert here, but I'm your own proof. I fucking hate dresses. She says there are other telltale signs that Ted isn't, but I don't think we can fully cross off this idea, especially because she doesn't really elaborate. I don't fully believe it, but I can absolutely make a case for being in a world that didn't let Kaczynski express their gender and, general self-doubt about being more open about it. That could absolutely lead to him feeling a lot of hatred for the world that built this culture. He also had no mother figure during a formative period of his life, and buddy, me too, and you can see where that led me. I've seen the hate comments, I know I'm a troon. The TLDR here is we can't rule this interpretation out like WENDIGOON says, and unless he has a better expert than the one I found, I can't know, because as I mentioned, he doesn't cite his sources. Every other major place talking about the possibility of Kaczynski being trans is either a secondhand source or a right-wing pundit like Charlie Kirk, who, hot take, I think they might have a bias here, but you might have to fact-check me on that. So, we know that WENDIGOON is trying to educate people with his discussion of historical topics. He said it in his own words. So that means a lot of viewers are going to take what he says as fact. That is the way he presents it. Most true crime YouTubers do the same. And this gets really iffy when he's trying to prove a conspiracy theory correct. Let's talk about his JFK video. Massive thanks to Margwa on Reddit, who brought this to my attention and showed me some of the things he got wrong. A lot of his points I will be paraphrasing in this video and giving some sources to because he blew him out of the water here. Huge thanks. I completely forgot that he made a video on the JFK assassination, which is great to me because this is one of the few CIA-related conspiracy theories that somehow isn't true. This video was made very impromptu and with no script, so it does make sense that he might get some information wrong. However, a lot of the issues with his take on this are not minor. They are massive and outwardly debunk many of the claims people make about the JFK assassination, not just WENDIGOON, but the people he got it from and the people that parrot these takes. The biggest one, the main thesis of the video, the CIA killed Kennedy. The motive here is supposed to be clear. JFK was mad because they failed the Bay of Pigs operation, and a lot of theorists even have a quote to support this. I'll let WENDIGOON say it for me.
If it was up to me, I would take the CIA, break them into 1,000 pieces, and throw them into the wind.
Now, this seems like an obvious motive, but this quote is very, very unsupported. The oldest source for it we can find is completely anonymous. Nobody knows who Kennedy was talking to. They say it was a higher up, but they don't specify which one, and the quote has only existed since after the assassination, which is obviously not reliable. They could just be making shit up. We don't know where this came from, and we can't prove that it's real. Kennedy was obviously pretty pissed with how they handled the Bay of Pigs, but it ended 2 years before Kennedy was assassinated. I feel like if they were that afraid of what Kennedy would do, they wouldn't have waited that long for the dust to settle. The next big point is the magic bullet theory, that it had to have been a big ol' squiggle to hit both Kennedy and Connolly in the places that it did. However, this point has been disproven for years. In basically any image you can find of the incident, you can see Kennedy leaning right against the door of the limo and Connolly in front sitting straight. In fact, a little bit to the left due to him sitting in the limo's jump seat. If Kennedy was leaning against the door, the entrance and exit wounds could absolutely have been possible. And people have known this for decades. There was not a second bullet. Even if Connolly thought there was, he could absolutely have been misremembering. WENDIGOON also claims that there were 6 shots and not 3.
They managed to pull the audio from the original Zapruder film and picked out that there were 6 shots fired in this amount of time of the film, not the original thought out 3.
This one is so extreme that a lot of JFK conspiracy theorists also don't believe it. About 77% of people who were there thought it was 3 shots. That is hundreds. You are going against the memory of hundreds of people. There was not only that, but there is a mass of about 2 bullets found. It is way more likely for them to have lost about a bullet's worth of fragments than a whole ass 4 bullets. That is a lot of metal to lose. Let's also talk about the grassy knoll claim. What are the biggest factors in this conspiracy? So we know Oswald was in front of the limo, right? That is way easier to shoot at than from the side of the grassy knoll. Think about it this way: a moving target is moving closer to you. That's easy to shoot at because it just gets bigger. You can keep your aim in the same place and still hit it. If it's moving side to side where the knoll's perspective would be, it would be way tougher, especially at the speed the limo was schmoving. There's no reasonable reason for them to be parked there. And of course, the obvious question, why would they put the agent on the ground level where everyone is? Just put him up in a building. You have the tools, you're the fucking CIA. The gunman is just super noticeable with nowhere to run that wouldn't be immediately found. It's pointless and so obviously wrong. Finally, WENDIGOON claims that Bush was there when JFK was shot on location. Our good friend George H.W. Bush.
There was a guy working at the CIA whose name rhymes with Gorge H-double-oo Mush. Gorge Mush, that's what we'll call him. Gorge Mush was one of the people put over this whole motorcade route and one of the people elected to keep the president safe.
I cannot find any proof for this. We know that Bush was a part of the CIA on that day. There are documents proving it. He had a whole ass speech about it. Being on location, though, no evidence towards that. None. Again, cite your sources so I know where you're getting this stuff from. I'd normally be way nicer towards this video because it was so clearly made quickly and with very little script, But the JFK assassination is one of the easiest to prove wrong conspiracy theories because basically none of the claims hold any water. And people keep parroting points from this video because, as I said before, WENDIGOON clearly states and wants you to believe that he is an educational channel. And he's positioning this false conspiracy theory as true with that context in mind. I want to make it clear here, I'm not a Fed. Fuck the CIA, they have done so much monstrous shit. JFK has too. He was overseeing the CIA when MKUltra was still chugling and didn't even try to stop it. I mentioned the Bay of Pigs before, Jesus Christ. I can name 10 horrible things the CIA did or tried to do, multiple involving JFK, and I wouldn't even have to look them up. Thank you, Relno the Storykeeper.
This plotting, bloodthirsty, murderous creature was the CIA.
Buddy, WENDIGOON, Relno's coming for your spot. New king of pissing off feds. Film cow made llamas with hats, buddy. Did you do that? Did ya? Did ya? If you want to learn more about the JFK assassination, I'd heavily recommend Sean Munger's 2 videos on the topic that Margwa's Reddit post suggested. I binged it on vacation, and it's fucking incredible and debunks way more about these conspiracy theories than I ever could with my 2 powers of Google and really liking Return of the Obra Dinn. He cites his sources on the screen, as well as being a professional historian that has discussed a lot of really controversial topics with a great amount of tact. Huge props on his Iran-Contra video. I would also like to mention really quick WENDIGOON's videos on Christianity. I'm no religious scholar, I am agnostic, and my parents are agnostic. I cannot say one way or the other. But in my original video on this, like 10 people claimed that his videos on Christian Apocrypha and angels were really flawed and had a lot of his own personal biases involved. I can't say anything strong on that one way or the other, but I wanted to mention it because this is supposed to be, you know, a big compendium of stuff he got wrong, and a lot of people really got mad at these videos. I will let you make your own decisions on these, and if you know more about it than I do, feel free to make your own video on the topic or comment your thoughts down below, and I'll give them a big ol' heart. I feel weird mentioning this, because who knows, maybe the multiple people who called these videos out as flawed and biased were all lying or misinformed, but the amount of people who brought it to my attention really concerned me, and it made me feel like I needed to talk about it here. There are some more minor lies in his videos that could very easily be chalked up as misinformation or WENDIGOON parroting overly hysteric views of certain topics. Take Red Rooms, for instance, which he states are absolutely real.
Red Rooms are the name given to several dark web pages in which people are either killed or tortured for the enjoyment of others online. A lot of this, as you read into it, gets into human trafficking, and while we know for a fact Red Rooms exist, what makes it even scarier is that all of these people had to come from somewhere.
They aren't. Video is insanely hard to send over any dark web browser, using Tor as an example. Due to difficulty with DNS connections and, streaming would be even harder. It would be choppy, chunky, and look like absolute dog shit. While yes, horrible child torture videos, they're definitely real. The dark web cannot host them directly, and at most can send you a torrent to the videos themselves, and that's not a stream, and can also very easily be sent through the light web. You can find that shit on Twitter, ain't that fun? I want to be clear here, we can chalk up a lot of this due to misinformation on his part, and WENDIGOON clearly being pretty gullible. And that is a reasonable assumption. However, if he takes so much flawed information and put it into a video that he presents as educational in his own words, people are going to take it as fact and perpetuate it. And that isn't great. A lot of people think that his silly videos on conspiracy theories or serial killers aren't trying to be serious and shouldn't be taken as anything more than just entertainment. But a lot of people believe what he is saying is fact, and I'm not going to act like he doesn't play into it. If he calls his videos educational, he needs to be set to that standard. He's no pundit, and he's not being deceptive on purpose, but he is still spreading misinformation, intentional or not, and he should be criticized for that. As I said before, an easy solution is to just cite where you're getting your information from. And that isn't as hard as it looks, just mark down what you're reading as you write the script, and copy and paste that into the description when you're done. If your biases slip through, or you get facts wrong, or you take stuff from not great sources, people can see that and know how you did it and do their own research on it way easier than they can without it. I don't know where you got saying George Bush was at the JFK assassination, for example. If you showed me where you got that from instead of just saying, just trust me, bro, you might be able to convince me that he was, and you just read a book that I didn't. These aren't lies. I do know a place where he did, absolutely, without a doubt, lie. Let's get political. I should start this off, I'm not accusing Wendigoon of being a neo-Nazi or being far-right. At most, I know he is a libertarian, but how left or right that is, I cannot assume. However, we know that he used to be, and openly lied about it. Let me explain. So, in around 2020, when Wendigoon's channel was first blowing up, people began calling him out for being a member of alt-right sect, the Boogaloo Boys. And he obviously got some heat for this, so he decided to make an apology, and I'm just gonna hand it to you straight, this is one of the worst apologies I've ever read. It is filled with blatant lies and misinformation. I will just read it out for you here and take you through it, debunking it afterwards. Alright, so I'll go ahead and make my official statement here, because it's better to come straight from me. Over 2 years ago, I was among the first to begin using the term Boogaloo. Originally, it was a rendition of Che Guevara's, not that he was a good person by any means, code word for revolution, and I've always been a proponent of freedom and liberty. I believe in the divine rights of every human, and therefore aspects of self-independence are important to me. So I began using the word in small settings, then decided to make a meme page using the name as no one had done so yet. To give you an idea, my name was Boogaloo Boy, and several had pointed to me being the original and starting the Hawaiian shirt thing, as I've always just worn those shirts. However, as the term became mainstream, more ideas began to come into the group. Everything from Antifa members to fascists wanted in on it, and the original idea became muddled and broken. I originally meant it as a for the people thing, yet it quickly became something else. To give you an idea, I watched the same news stations call it far leftist movement and a far right movement in the same day. It became something I didn't want to be a part of, so I left. I dropped the name, took a break, and decided to talk about things I enjoy like conspiracies and movies under the new title, Wendigoon. It was something I acknowledged, but I am not a part of anymore for what it became. Some of my current followers and friends were with me then, but I'm not a part of that anymore. Alright, let's just go down the list here. First, he was not one of the first to use the term Boogaloo. He might have been one of the first to call himself a Boogaloo Boy. I have doubts, but it might be possible. We don't really have that much archives of the early history, but we absolutely do know that Boogaloo as a term to represent what I'll explain later has been a phrase used on the keyboard since 2010. When Wendigoon would have been 11 years old. The timeline absolutely does not add up. I do not know why he would lie about this. We do know he was on the K-board when he was younger. It was the 14 Guns and Weapons board, and looking at his old videos, he references many injects from that board as well as, talking about guns and weapons a lot. Next, the origin of the term is by far the most blatant lie he pulled. Him saying that it came from Che Guevara, no way. Absolutely not. There is no record of Che saying Boogaloo is a code word for revolution or anything similar. All of it points back to Wendigoon as the source. If anything, Che loved saying revolution. It was kind of his thing. In fact, the origins of the word Boogaloo came from Latin R&B that was spawned in the late 60s, at the tail end of Che's life. So where does the word Boogaloo come from? Well, it comes from the classic cinematic masterpiece, Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. That has become a very corny in-joke whenever you talk about sequels, to call it something to Electric Boogaloo. You've probably heard it many times. The reason why this is relevant is because the term Boogaloo in this context is a dog whistle, a shortening of Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. It was the way people on K say they wanted a second Civil War without actually saying it. Boogaloo in this context means Civil War II. Let's bring back slavery, baby. This is the known history of the term. You can find it super easily, and any source talking about the history of the Boogaloo Boys movement says that this is where the term came from. The movement started insanely far right-wing. That is why it is named the Boogaloo Boys. And Wendigoon tries to bury the lead by saying it was supposed to be a centrist libertarian movement, even though every source on the history clearly states that the Boogaloo Boy movement was far right from the beginning to the end. It was about starting another civil war. He did not leave because it became infested with fascists. It always was fascist. He might have started to disagree with their beliefs, but he shouldn't act like the beliefs suddenly changed. He lied about the origins of the term not out of mistake or listening to misinforming sources, but rather to make it seem like he wasn't as far right as he actually was. I want to say again, I do really believe that he isn't far right anymore. He was a dumb teenager when he believed this stuff. I get it. But lying about the origins to make yourself seem like the good guy, the centrist libertarian hero who made a movement about personal liberty that got taken over by fascists, is not okay. Lying about it makes you seem worse by association. In any situation like this, it's always best to tell the truth. And by giving us obviously debunkable statements like the term being invented by Che or you being one of the first to use the term Boogaloo really muddles the water. And I've seen nobody criticize him for this. So many people, when talking about this controversy, take Wendigoon's statement at its word, even when 90% of it doesn't add up. I do believe that Wendigoon isn't a person on the far right anymore. However, I do also believe that he blatantly and flagrantly lied about it in his apology about the past, and that's not something you do in an apology. You have to tell the truth. You have to speak out. You'll be better off if you do, because lying about something like this when you're in the hot seat is going to make you look way less trustworthy, which isn't what you want. And before you say it, because I know so many people are going to say it, no, I'm not criticizing him because he's Christian. From what I've heard, his beliefs do get in the way of him talking about religious works, but I do not have enough experience to say one way or the other, and those works are also about Christianity. Not all Christians are members of the Westboro Baptist Church, and I know this. One of my biggest influences, Jay Tholen, the creator of works like Hypnospace Outlaw and Dropsy, is a devout believer and puts a lot of his beliefs into his work. And that work is some of my favorite games that I've ever played. He's a super sweet guy, and his religion does not change how much I respect him as an artist and as a person. I do not care about his religious beliefs because I don't know enough about it to make a good judgment call. Again, if you have anything to say about how he handles those topics, please comment them down below. It would be super helpful. I do believe that Wendigoon can improve as a content creator. The solutions to these problems are pretty easy, and in my opinion would improve his videos and the watching experience for them tenfold. He just needs to cite his sources, be open about his influences. Stop letting his personal biases cloud discussions of religion or conspiracy. Think closer about what he's reading and taking in mind, and take full accountability for his uncomfortable beliefs when he was a young edgelord. I do believe he can be better, and I hope this video helps make that happen. I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to ruin this guy. I genuinely want to help. I'm Rebecca Kimple, and I hope you have a good night.